daughter is supposed to. So if you see me texting, they're supposed to be my support staff upstairs. Let me know when we're live. And it looks like we are. All right, guys. Hey, good to see you. Forgive me. I'm texting my support staff right now. I know this is a little unprofessional, but I'll introduce my very, very special guest as soon as I text my wife to make sure, or if you guys are there. Hey, Bobby, what's going on? First off, well, since Alex, you're already here, guys, can you hear me real well? Does everything look good, sound good? All is well. I know these guys pretty well, so I'll be a little less professional with them. What's up, Bass Fishing, TK Evan? What's up, Aaron? All right, good deal. All right, guys, I'm going to introduce you to a guy who I'm a big fan of. Some of you may know, and if you don't know him, you absolutely need to go to his channel, stop watching this live stream, don't close it, just minimize it, and subscribe to Mr. Joe Holland Fishing. He is an FLW Pro, and as you can tell, he is just, I mean, if you watch his videos, and we'll get more into that later, he is just a super good guy. I mean, I'm just the poor lowly bass geek, and I've got the man, Joe Holland, on my show. I can't tell you how big of a fan I am of his. Like I said, his videos speak for themselves. We'll get into talking to him, and I will let Joe introduce himself, and I will shut up because I'm drooling all over myself that he's even here with us right now.
Oh, man, hey, thank you so much for that. What's up, guys? I am pumped to be here. This is my first live broadcast on YouTube, and it's exciting, man. It's exciting for me too. I'm looking forward to a lot of the questions and you know, getting a little bit more involved in the YouTube community.
Well, now I know. Let's talk about, before we get jumped in on YouTube. We'll lean a little more toward that. Anybody, by the way, if you want to interrupt me, if you see some guys in the comments that you want to shout out or say hey to, you feel free to do that at any time. Guys, we're going to really gear this toward you all. We're going to answer your questions, but I do want to get a little background. And my first question to Joe is, okay, Joe, I've seen these FLW. Now I'm not good enough to get my picture took by FLW, but that stand, is that just like standard? Do they prep you first before you come out there? Because you can scroll through every pose. You know, can you deny that stand, or they like they shock you and like, no, you have to.
You ever seen those electric cattle prongs?
Yeah.
So there's like 5 of those mounted around you. No, I'm just kidding. It's really, if you think about it, and it'll make it really simple, it's really just to get the sponsors out there a little bit more.
Okay, I see that.
You know, like everybody wants to stand there like this.
Like that, yeah.
You know, look rugged and put up a good front. But if you do that, you're blocking your #1 sponsor, your #2. You know, you only got your elbow sponsors. And there's not a lot of elbow sponsors on the FLW Tour, unless you're big time. If you're big time, you could pull in those elbow sponsors, the lower elbow sponsors.
I was going to say, I've seen Scott Martin's jersey, and I think he's got sponsors on his rear end. I mean, you couldn't fit more sponsors. They go down the sides of him. I'm like, good Lord.
Yeah, oh yeah. There's a lot of guys that are fortunate enough to have that many sponsors, but no, we show up, and it's really cool because, you know, the behind the scenes. I wanted to shoot a little bit more of that. I didn't get a chance to this year on the show, but like DW is one of my really good friends, David Wayne Reed. He's the photographer for FLW. Now he stays behind the camera more than anything, so a lot of guys don't know who he is. But, man, he puts together some incredible pictures. And you show up like that first event of the year, and you got your meeting, and there's 2 X's on the floor. And they say, stand on those X's, put your hands on your side. Now I want you to twist a little bit. It does not feel natural at all. You know, since then, maybe I've adopted it and used it like during competition or something like that, you know, before blast off. I'll stand on my boat and do that amongst a couple other buddies and just see if I get a couple laughs. But yeah, that is the FLW pose, man. You're not going to see that many other places.
I've not done anything good enough to be able to get one of those pictures, so maybe in the next year or two I'll get lucky enough to do that. But I've argued with myself in my head several times. which says a lot about me all by itself right there. But I've argued with myself in my head several times. I'm like, I'm just going to say no. No, I'm not standing like that. Like I'll stand like this. I'll do any other thing you want. But I'm just being different, daggone it.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Or really practice that pose and get it down.
Yeah, I've got to make it look good.
There's not many people that really pull that pose off, to be honest.
No, and I can't. I can't pull that pose off.
Yeah, the whole hands on the hip side, put your chest down. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, me and you are both shaped, close to each other. I'm more keg than six pack. So
I'm working on my before picture. So.
Yeah. So all right, guys, and I'm sorry. I've seen a lot of guys come through here. So Joe. Now, guys, Joe does a series called The Average Joe on his site. And if most of you have seen Circuit Breaker by FLW or Brandon Polinick's series and all good series, Shy Rocks series, all good series. But I'll tell you what I love about Joe. Joe, you couldn't have named that series any better because, you are you feel like a very approachable, very down to earth, like a guy that loves fishing. And hey, just so happens, I'm a daggone good stick who's a professional. By the way, that's who I am. So, and what I love about Joe's series is that he shows a lot of stuff like catching snakeheads, catching cooked there on the Average Joe. That was awesome. I didn't even know, I'll be honest with you, we don't have snakehead around here, and I didn't even know that snakehead was actually an edible fish, much less a delicacy that you guys told everyone that it was.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is, you can tell Joe is a good guy, and I've told him this and said this 100 times. There's a lot of kids that he talks to in his videos. There's also, I don't know that I would do this. I told him, I said, especially in today's world, it seems like we're all afraid of everything, but Joe goes and picks a guy up off the bank, a random stranger who's bank fishing, just goes up to him and says, "Hey, want to go fishing with me today?" I mean, an FLW Pro pulls up on the bank. This guy did he know who you were? Did he know?
No, not at all. No.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead.
But I mean, that just goes to show, and this is why I'm a huge fan of Joe's. I mean, you just don't get any better than that. You're a pro angler, you pull up. He does it with two kids who were dock fishing too, right?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun for me. There was a couple kids on one of my favorite lakes that I've ever fished in Maine, China Lake. I hadn't been out there for like a year or two just because of the scheduling and how things have been working out. And I had like 2 hours in the afternoon to go out. And I'm driving over there at like 80 miles an hour and all pumped. I'm going to hit these spots that haven't seen a bait for like 2 years. I'm going to smash them. And I put the boat in. There's two kids there, and they're fishing off the dock. They might have had one rod upside down, and you could just tell how much these kids were like really interested in fishing. And good kids. I mean, you just by looking at them, they're fishing. They're fishing. Who's not a good kid if you're fishing? And they're watching that boat like they'd never seen a bass boat before, and that thing's sparkly, shiny. And I'm looking at myself like, man, I've been there. I've been that kid before. And I'm like, it'd be awesome just to bring these kids out and just, further the sport. Like, I feel like anything that you have a passion for, whether it be, I don't care if it's playing a guitar or hunting or fishing or painting pictures or shooting photography, if you have a passion for it and people help you get there, and really help you along the way, man, I think it's the best thing in the world to be able to help others and pass it down. So, I brought them on the boat and they were like, man, it was fun. Like, they were a little scared at first too, and it's just like, it's fishing, dude. It's like the universal language. You get out there and you make a cast or two, and these kids like started to learn a little bit, and I taught them what I could, and they're teaching me this Snapchat thing, and I'm learning about Snapchat, and they're learning how to throw a jig. It was an awesome trade-off, and they each got their personal best, and man, they had so much fun. I had And that's the thing that's got most people fooled, is they think that the kids have the most fun out there. But man, I have more fun than they do, I think.
And guys, I'm telling you, you know, this is not a show. Joe is this type of guy, man. I mean, you can watch the Average Joe. The thing that I like about it, and the thing that I like about the Average Joe series, is Joe is real. He shows the good, he shows the bad. But the thing about Joe is that, man, I don't know that I ever see you not smiling. I mean, he's a big dude. You know, I wouldn't want to catch him in a, you know, dark alley when somebody's really pissed him off. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know that the guy ever is not smiling. He can be having the worst day on the water in the world. And even in the worst day, he's sitting there going, yeah, yeah. He's talking to other boaters, making jokes. I mean, he's just this good of a guy. Guys, just like I said, he deserves so much more on his YouTube channel. Make sure you go out and subscribe to him.
Man, I just appreciate that so much. I really do appreciate that. It's the one thing with the show, when I started it, you know, I thought I might have had a shot to be on Circuit Breaker. You know, the show FLW had. It's a hit series. Yeah. Just an incredible show. I think Travis was the guy who was doing it all. And really, I think one person put that entire thing together. And he just didn't have the time to do it. And I don't know if the resources were there. And I met him at Kentucky Lake when he was shooting Cody Myers last season, which still hasn't aired. And, you know, I thought, well, maybe I got a shot at that. You know, they told me earlier, you got to run a Ranger. Well, I started running a Ranger, not for that reason, but so I thought, yeah, maybe I got a shot at that, you know. And it got discontinued, you know. And I was talking with a couple guys at FLW, and they said, well, man, you know, I think you might have a shot at it. Well, flat out got discontinued. And I got thinking, I'm like, man, why don't I just make my own? You know, and I made my own, and the most important part about it was that it had to be true and real and give the fans of the sport, which is so important, the fans of the sport, you know, I wanted to give them full access, nothing denied, whether it be the hotel room, you know, shoot the breeze with your buddies, at the meeting some days. You know, if you watch the series, and I haven't really gone back and watched a lot of it, but if you watch the series, you're going to see pretty much just about everything to the tour. I mean, I think the opening scene's me at the bank, if it wasn't me ice fishing up here, planning on fishing it, you know, getting a loan to get the boat and, you know, meeting with some sponsors and, you know, getting out there practicing. And I detailed like every practice, what I was looking for, what was working, what wasn't, some baits, you know, hanging out with the guys, the service crews. So as great a show as Circuit Breaker is, this thing's like, is just no holds barred. It's real, true to life. You know, some of it's boring. Other than the first or second episode, which Mikey Balls actually put together for me, because Mikey's just, I don't know if you guys watch his stuff on YouTube. If you don't, get over there, check it out. He was like one of the original YouTube fishermen, Mikey Balls, man. He had some awesome stuff, some really good flipping stuff. Well, he put together my first couple videos and taught me how to use Premiere Pro. So you'll see, like, as the season progresses, I get a little bit better with the video editing stuff. You know, the first two are lights out, knockout, professional. Mikey Balls put them together. And then after that, you get a couple that are like, whoa, what happened here? Where's all the glitter and glam? And then I kind of learned how to do a lot of the editing. I still don't do a lot of music or anything like that because it's, you know, it's just keep it real. So.
Well, you got to be careful with the music. That's a one, especially if you're monetized. You can get some strikes on that if you're not careful. So
yeah, I didn't want to mess around with it too much, and I didn't really want it to take away too much from the fishing. So I put a little background music in there, and really worked hard actually at learning how to do the video editing. Got it to a point where I really liked it. And, you know, I thought I could put together a decent show for guys, a little bit entertaining, a lot educational, and really just give guys that inside pass that they don't get very often, you know, uncensored pass, you know.
Yeah. Well, and what I like about it, you know, is that you show everybody, you know, we don't stay in glamorous hotels, you know, it's not the sport for most people simply is not glitz and glamour. It's not like being a pro basketball player, pro baseball player, pro golfer for that matter. You know, there's there's, you know, 10 guys in a house that they're splitting, you know, and you're on the water from sun up to sundown, 14, 16, 18-hour days,
Yeah.
you know, and then and part of that is sitting on the boat, retying, relining, you know, prepping your gear for the next day, and you're doing that week in, week out with a lot of travel, and that's what I like to see. That I was actually going to say, you know, your travel days. You know, when the truck broke down, that was that was weird that it just suddenly broke down, had no oil, you put oil in it and it's fine.
I don't know what
happened there. Yeah, I've never seen that in my life. B, you know, I mean, it's just you get your thoughts on those hours and hundreds of miles that you're going on. So it really gives a lot of insight.
Yeah, I forgot to even mention the road life. I mean, a lot of people don't know that road life's a big part of the tour. You know, we put on 40,000 miles in like 6 months. You know, on the road this year, I got rear-ended. A guy took off a piece of my snag on the way to a tournament, so I didn't even know if I was going to be able to get the motor working. And it ended up working out. But yeah, we got that all on there. It's pretty cool. If you're interested in like the behind-the-scenes thing, just kind of peruse, you know, go through it. You might find something interesting.
All right, so last question for Joe from me, and I'll quit being a fanboy here, and I want you to share this. So just give us a little taste of, you know, your passion. What got you started? Where did you start? How did you get from point A to point B? What motivated you? Joe's been a pro on FLW Tour for 2 years. I've skimmed your bio 2 or 3 times. He fished the BFLs. Now I'm not saying I'll ever be a pro. I'm old and fat and out of shape and probably never get there. But you know, just talk about sort of the process real quick, and then we'll start fielding questions from everybody.
Sure. Yeah. You want me to keep it brief or get right into it?
Well, you know, if you're going to throw some dirty deeds out there, let's break it open. I don't know, whatever you want to do.
All right. So basically, man, my dad is the best fisherman I know to this day. I don't care who I fished against on the tour and who I fished against anywhere. He's the best fisherman I've ever met. Taught me everything. You know, I forgot half the stuff he taught me, and he's forgot more than I'll ever know, to be honest with you. So luckily for me, my parents are just incredible people. Moved us up to Maine from New Jersey when I was really young. Kind of wanted to live that more like a country home woods lifestyle that I'm just in love with to this day. And my dad fished. He loved to fish. He joined a bass club in the 70s when bass clubs were kind of getting put together. And I got a picture of him somewhere over there holding up like almost all the trophies for the club at the end of the year. He's got like the whole club for the banquet. And he's holding up like 4 out of the 5 trophies or something like that. It was awesome. But the cool thing was he got us on the water. You know, I have an older brother, a younger brother, and a sister. And whenever we wanted to go fishing, he'd never say no. We had a 5-horse Johnson Game Fisher outboard, 14-foot aluminum boat. That thing would hum. And it'd take a half hour to get to the fishing spot. But that's how I learned how to fish thoroughly, you know, and fish for every fish that you could catch there. So as a child, it really got instilled in me the love and passion for fishing. You know, I could not get enough of it, and I just wanted to learn all the techniques I could. And you know, growing up in Maine back in the day, we had magazines maybe at best. We didn't have the fishing shows, the YouTube shows, Instagram, Facebook. The wealth of information really wasn't there for us unless we were lucky enough to have people like my dad or other friends or people like that to show us. So I got lucky there, and I just kind of took it and ran with it. You know, I wanted to learn how to fish a jig. That's the only rod I threw that summer was a jig rod. You know, next year I want to learn how to fish a spook. It's the only thing I threw the whole summer until I felt like I was, you know, good enough to throw that spook at any time. So that's kind of what got me into fishing. And then high school, college, played a lot of sports. I played just about every sport you could. And I really have this competitive bone in me that, you know, you find that most athletes do, or fishermen, or anybody in sports still, you know, after their childhood that still chase a dream or whatever, they still have that competitive nature in them. So, you know, I played baseball, And baseball was my absolute favorite sport. You know, I wanted to be a professional baseball player, loved catching. I was a catcher. I ended up going to college. I played college ball at St. Joe's and just had an awesome, awesome career. Great time there. Met some of the best friends of my life. And it really brought that competitive level even higher. Like my first year I was there, we were mediocre at best. We were going through some changes. And then by the time I left, we ended up leading the nation in wins losses. We won 36 out of 40 games. And my junior year, we had, I think, out of the 31 or 2 wins, 17 of them were comeback wins in the last inning or two. So, like, man, you want to talk about competition and just a love of team and sport and really building that drive. So that kind of got me to that level. Then once I graduated, I mean, that was it for my baseball career. I am what I am. I got as far as I could get. Maybe I probably got a little bit further than I could get on my talent and ability. I definitely did. I'm not gonna lie. College ball was awesome. So after college and not being able to play ball, I really missed that competitive drive. And I never gave up fishing. I never gave up tournaments. And so I naturally kind of gravitated towards tournament fishing. And in the off season, I would go up in the Maine woods, the wilderness, and I'd trap and hunt for like 3 months, live in the woods, middle of nowhere, wouldn't see a person for like a month sometimes 2 months, not talk to anybody, and then come out and fish in the summers, all the while working construction jobs, whether it be foundations or milking cows. I grew up milking cows on a farm. And, man, I had a pretty good knack for it, for tournament fishing, from what my dad taught me. And I always had a boat that would sink every tournament, aluminum boat, 35 horsepower motor, and every boat, every tournament I'm bailing it out, and I was holding my own. Maine's tough. I mean, some of the best fishermen I know live in Maine, and we're on small lakes that never change. We don't have the flowing rivers. It's not like Tennessee River or anything like that. We don't have gizzard shad or shad. And you're fishing against guys that have fished the same rock pile for 30 years. They know every intricate detail and pebble on it. And they know rocks that other people don't know against. So it's tough in Maine. And I started, doing better in the tournaments. I joined a club, went from the back of the boat to the front of the boat, started doing well there. So I started fishing some of the opens in Maine. I started, did pretty well there. So I moved up to state fish-off, started making some state teams. And then I caught the eye of a guy in Maine here that Mark Osgood, one of my great friends, who, he really pushed for me to get it to that next level. And it was always a dream of mine, but man, I didn't have the money. I was working, hourly rate, just working as hard as I could, putting foundations in or floors down. And he really reached out for me to a lot of his contacts in the fishing world. And it had changed a lot since he had fished at the semi-pro or pro level years ago. And he wasn't getting any ground. He's talking to guys and, said, what can we do to get this guy in a boat? He'd sold boats for some of these companies, and they said, man, we just can't do it. We can't even get some of the guys. It's just not done anymore. And he said, well, screw it. I'll do it myself. So he put me in a boat and sent me on the road and got me into the BFLs, got me into the Costa series, which was the old Ray of Axe. I think before that was the Everstart series, and just sent me out there, man. And it was like a freaking dream come true. It still is. I'd never be where I am today if I wasn't lucky enough to have Mark and his family behind me. So that's kind of how I got to where I was. And then, I think the first year in the Ray of Axe, I cashed checks 3 out of 4 times, on lakes I'd never been to all over the Southeast. And I qualified for the tour. But we talked about it then and said, man, I'm going to need, 1, I'm going to need a little bit more back end. 2, I'm going to need a little bit more experience, on the, fishing across the country like that, because I'd only fished basically in Maine or New England. And then after that, I think the second year I fished the Ray of Axe, I didn't qualify. I was in like the 20th range like that. And, still cashing checks, which is, a big deal. It was a big deal for me making the championship. Then the third year, I qualified for the tour once again. I finished 8th out of, I think 250 guys ended up fishing that year. The numbers skewed a little bit because like Okeechobee had 250, Gunnersville had 240, and then Seminole had like 200 or 190 or something like that. So, you know, you can look at the list and the list will say 400 guys fished the tour and I finished 8th. But in reality, like 180 people might have fished all 3.
Yeah.
And I finished 8th and qualified for the tour once again. So we got together, got into a little bit more sponsorship, and yeah, fished my first year on the tour 2 years ago. Had a decent year. You know, I held my own. I cashed in 3 of the 6 tournaments. Would have been 4. But I got disqualified at Pickwick because the dam or the lock freaking blocked us out. It was a mess. I would have had probably a top 10 or 20 there for sure. And cash checks. And then last year I had a rough year. And, you know, a couple guys, you know, in the Facebook or YouTube world reached out to me and told me I should probably change my show name to Below Average Joe. You know, it was a rough year. I'm not gonna lie. It was a rough year on the water and off the water. And it's one of those things where you build momentum in fishing, like anything, but especially in fishing. Momentum's huge, and I just could never get that grip. I was right there, had good practices, and you know the water would, or the air temp would drop 50 degrees overnight and rain after a sunny practice. I just didn't have enough experience on these places I've never been on a tough schedule, and I just didn't pull it together. You know, I didn't do a good job as a pro, and I missed a lot of checks. I didn't cash a check last year, which it hurt, but it put a big chip on my shoulder too. So that's kind of the long story on how I got to where I got and where I'm at.
That's fun. All right, guys. So now, you know, I've geeked out with Joe long enough. So you guys go ahead and start rolling your questions through.
Hank, what do you want me to do here? Do you want me to read the comments, or are you going to read them? Or
I'll read them to you when they start coming through. I'll start scrolling through and seeing.
Pretty much nothing's out of bounds here, guys. If there's anything you want to know fishing-wise or pro-wise or about other guys on tour or how it's run or anything like that, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to answer. You know, I'm going to give you a straight, shooting, honest answer the best I can, and hopefully I can help some guys out there that either want to be here or striving to do something different or just want to learn anything. So that's a big part of what I try to do.
Let's see. I know we've missed some quick.
And if there's no questions, I got a feeling there's 2 guys here that could probably keep this airways going for the next 10 or 12 hours.
I know we've got stories we could swap. Let's see. Here's a question from Rebecca Nelson. I live in Minnesota. What would be the best bait for ice fishing through the ice, of course?
So we're talking now ice fishing. I used to love to ice fish, and I got a couple videos on there from last year when I got to ice fish. I hadn't ice fished for like 10 years because I was going south for the winter. But you're not allowed to use live bait, which, you know, most of the time in Maine, we're using live bait for when we're ice fishing. It's hard to beat like a jig, you know, any kind of like a small feathered or hair jig or something you can bounce up and down the bottom. One of the best jigs I've ever used for lake trout, salmon, and pike is actually a little saltwater diamond jig. You know, it's shiny, it's got like a hook or two, and it's heavy. And you just sit there on your bucket or you stand up next to the hole and you bounce that thing up and down like that, and you got one on. So little diamond jigs, Castmaster makes one. Quite a few brands make like a little heavy metal jig with just one hook on the back.
Now I know you've seen, you know, I fish Cherokee and South Holston. I've never ice fished. It doesn't freeze over down here, thank God. So, but I did a live stream with Benjamin Noak, who was on here. I hope he's still on here. Ben, if you're on here, hey, thanks for stopping by.
Great show, by the way. That fellow's got a great channel as well. That's something that I subscribe to and watch on the reg.
And he's a hell of a stick.
Sure.
Hell of a stick. He actually pointed out to me, he goes, well, you ice fish. He goes, you do that Demiki rig vertical all year. He said, you just can move around with it. He said, that's the same thing. You just don't need a hole to do it in. So I was like, oh,
yeah, just picture that.
That's a good point. All right. So BA Fishing says, I need some tips on transition period fishing. Now, are you talking fall or winter transition, BA? I'll tell you what, I'll let Joe answer that. Either
Yeah,
or.
it depends. It depends what we're looking at, but you know, and it really kind of depends where you are. There's a lot of factors to a question like that, but one of the things as the water gets colder, I'm guessing that's the kind of the transition we're looking at now, just because of the time of year, is your bait seems to school up. A lot of times it'll go into the back of creeks, and you'll get a ton of bait back in there, whether it be spawning or just getting together for the winter. You know, in Maine, we don't have the shad, so shad's something that I had to learn, or I'm still learning as I travel. But the bait will school up, and what that also does is brings the bass together and gets them to school up too, and it allows the fishermen to be able to throw more moving baits, whether it be crank baits, jerk baits, rip baits, and it really opens up that game right there. Where you know jerk bait season, you get a good jerk bait season at the beginning of the year in temperature in climates that change pretty drastically, and you get a really good fall season on it too. So those are a couple things when the weather changes like that. Once it gets transitioned into even colder weather, then it comes down to slowing down. The fish stop chasing the bait so much. The bait settles in the areas, and the fish will get a lot deeper. You know, and I know Hank likes to fish deeper too. I myself love fishing deep, and that's when we pick up like a jig or a silver buddy, and you get a little bit less reaction bites. You got to work a little bit slower, but you can still put big fish in the boat and big bags in the boat.
All right, we've got, let me get caught up here. Oh, yeah. How much fun are JT Kenny and Thrift to be around off the water? Honestly.
Not a bit. Not a bit.
I could tell it's just a show for in front of the camera. They're total douchebags, I'm sure.
No, in all honesty, it's really the most fun of the whole darn thing.
When we're alone, I'll get you to tell some stories.
You want to talk about two just great guys, and you know, you probably wouldn't pick them together so much if you didn't get to know them. Like, you know, JT, both those guys are two of the smartest guys I've ever met. You know, we can't leave Brian New out either, because he traveled with us too, a co-angler, one of the best co-anglers in the history of professional fishing too.
I suck as a co-angler.
Oh, this kid is absolutely amazing, front or back of the boat, but especially out of the back of the boat. But anyway, so traveling with these guys, frickin' JT, these guys, like, I sleep in my truck. I'm broke. I never have any money. I'm worried about if I'm, you know, I don't even change my line every tournament. You know, like,
yeah,
like it's just what I can do. I do what I can do. You know, it's all I can do. And these guys took me in like a little lost puppy. You know, kind of like birds of a feather flock together. So, you know, a lot of what those guys really stand for in life or like to do, I think we're all pretty much in the same line, you know, kind of a parallel. We really love hunting, you know, and shooting stuff to eat and to feed our families or feed ourselves. We love fishing. We love competition, but more than anything, we love the camaraderie of each other and other guys on tour too. You know, like, there's a brotherhood out there that a lot of people don't see, and hopefully, you know, if you watch my off day videos, hopefully you pick up on a little bit of that. So.
Yeah. You know, even at the BFL level, you know, that's one thing. You know, the first year I fished it, you know, I, as outgoing as a guy as I am, you know, I was still, you know, I know these guys are good anglers. You know, it makes me nervous, you know, because even at that level, I'm like, man, these guys are good. I'm a nobody. You know, let me come in here and meet these guys. But I always wanted to be part of that so that I could learn from these guys and to get out there. That's the one thing, especially the second year, man, I had such a good time. There were so many people out there that was just talking to me and hanging out with me, and just being able to be part of that community and in tournament fishing. I mean, you compete with each other, but at the same time, you're ribbing each other. You're sharing, you know, things with each other, and you got to be careful. Some of them lie about it, but you know, it's the camaraderie is awesome.
Yeah, you hit it right there, man. That's really the best part about it. And you know, we're out there trying to kill each other on the water and beat each other's brains in. But at the end of the day, it's all about helping each other out. And, you know, you don't see a lot of that stuff, but you know, I was at Cumberland Lake, which isn't far from you, and here I am broke down. I got a decent bag of fish alive while I'm in the middle of the lake, and you know, 4 or 5 guys drove by me and didn't stop, which kind of still pisses me off this day. And I almost knocked one of them out in the parking lot. And I'm not a fighting guy, but I just didn't like it. And here comes Brian Thrift, who's leading angler of the year. He's got a good bag, but he knows it's not good enough yet. And he's due in a half hour after me. And some gun, if that guy doesn't stop, bring me and my fish in, and he forfeits a half hour of his day in an angler of the year race that was tight. It was really tight then. It ended up still pretty tight. That he ended up winning. Now, if that doesn't tell you a little bit about a guy's character, I don't know what does. You know, and just one of the best guys that you'll ever hear about. The fish is professional.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right, so I've got a question. Where was it?
And you know, something else along that story that I don't want to leave out. So my boat's, I don't know how far away it is. It's like 50 miles away. We got to go pick it up now with the trailer because I couldn't run the motor at that point because I hit a log. And so now we got to get my boat on the trailer. But my co-angler, who was nice enough to keep it off the rocks and stuff, the battery wore down. So he's kind of stranded holding on to a tree. So now we got to get a boat in there. So who comes down? But Mr. JT Kinney, Jake, drives 50, 60 miles, his truck and boat, trailers down in the middle of nowhere, puts his boat in. We run around the point. We find this poor soul, great guy, the co-angler, get him in. He fell. He landed on the electronics, almost hurt himself, almost fell in. Watch that clip. You'll enjoy it. Cumberland, maybe in day one. And JT gets me on the trailer, you know, gets me home. So, I mean, it really didn't have anything to do with staying with these guys. They're just top-notch people. You know, they do that with for anybody, even if you do it for them.
Well, that's a good bunch to room with.
It sure is, yeah.
You're going to learn a lot from that group, I'm sure.
You are, and that might be one thing I didn't do good enough is pick the brains, just out of respect for those guys. But the more I hang around them, you know, they do throw out some knowledge bombs my way. I just got to be smart enough to light the fuse on them.
So Bass Fishing with TK Heaven says Lake Okeechobee, the spawn runs November through May, I understand.
Pretty much, dude.
Any other lakes that are like that?
Yeah, that's pretty much the truth. I've never really been there in November, but I've been down in December, and it has a cycle of spawns that's just nonstop, and it's totally dependent on the weather. You know, if the weather, the best weather you could ever hope for the spawn, or even fishing on Okeechobee, is hard cold fronts for like a month. Because what that does is it backs up 4 weeks of spawners, you know, because it cycles of fish coming and going. Some stay after they spawn, some go, some are staying as some are going, you know. But it's this big cycle. If you get a big cold front in the winter, what it does is it holds everything back. It holds them out. They don't spawn. They stay back. And then your first real good weather change, if you could ever get like a pretty good flat weather system for a little while after that, then they just rush in and it's freaking lights out. I think the year before I got a bass boat down there, it was the best year I've ever seen on Okeechobee. I fished. I was just learning the lake. There was a jig bite on. You're pitching an ounce to an ounce and a half jig into these spawning fish, and you don't ever see the fish. It's, you know, people. It's not like bed fishing at home. You're looking for like a little curve in the weeds or buggy whips or something that they're spawning on, like a root system. And you're flipping an ounce, 2 ounce weight, and it's 4 foot deep, and that thing can't hit the bottom before 6 or 8 pounders got it like 10 feet to the side. Wow. I think I fished 11 tournaments. I had a buddy let me borrow his boat. It was aluminum. That thing literally sunk just about every tournament. We had to pick it off the bottom a couple times. Had a 60 horse, half the cylinders were gone, blown out of it, and I fished 11 tournaments. I averaged 27.5 pounds for 11 tournaments. And I only that's 5 fish. I only cashed a check 7 of those 11 times with that average. So, I mean, if you didn't have 30 pounds, you knew you weren't winning. And you knew you had to have like 35 at that point. You're calling 6 pounders. And that was all because of that spawn got backed up by these huge cold fronts that lasted like 2 months. And then it just was stable, flat, warming trend water, moon, and it was like a perfect storm. And then Okeechobee hasn't quite been the same since. but you do get that spawn. You know, you get that spawn every year, and it's late. It's early to late. Yeah, it's awesome.
So I got a from Bass Raider 810. Is a glass rod, medium power, moderate action, good for crankbaits?
It is, yeah, it's good. You know, for a couple years back, I was thinking that that was the way to go. You know, just glass rods, but I kind of switched away from them. Went to composite rods that had it had the same bend and a little bit of the same feel as your glass rods, but it's they're a lot lighter, and you actually get a lot more feeling. You lose the feeling with the glass rods, but what you gain is you gain that huge parabolic bend, and that bend, so when fish are pulling on those treble hooks or jumping, you're not going to lose them as much on a straight glass rod. But the trouble is, it's really hard to feel exactly what you're hitting, you know, and what the bottom, and distinguish between the bottom and the fish. Whereas with a rod that's more like a composite or half and half, then you get to feel a lot more, but you still have that big bend. So, you know, I'd say the technology surpassed the glass rods now. You know, there's guys out there still throwing glass rods, and you can't say a bad thing about them. But if you want something a little bit lighter with a lot more sensitivity, it's going to give you that same parabolic bend, it's going to give you that same abilities to land fish, then look at the newer rods now.
Yeah, I agree with that. Glass is all right, but I like the composites. Even straight graphite with a moderate action, you know, a good tip to it. I tend to lean that way a little bit. For me, you know, that's kind of where I go with it. All right, now I'm looking through. Oh, Shoeless Ray says, outdoors says, do I see a Can You Beat the Geek episode in the future featuring Joe? I think Joe would beat the ever loving insert.
Nah, man,
I don't think that would be Joe catching fish and me cussing.
No, man, that's not how it is. Well, I want to get out and do some kind of challenge with you. I'm having a lot of fun with some of these challenges. I'm shooting with some guys, and we'll go out and shoot a challenge together. We'll have a blast. But it's anybody's ball game when you're out there fishing, guys. Don't ever think it isn't. You know, if you ever thought that way, you're already beat. So you can do it. You know you can.
All right. So, and guys, if I missed any of your questions, make sure you're putting them back in there. So that we know what's going, or so that I can answer them, or Joe can answer them for you. So I've got a question for you. I'm the Bass Geek. I, you know, really get into the details. So what is the bait you have the most confidence in? And don't give away anything too much, but give us away a couple of, are you a guy that really tweaks baits, you know, to get something a little different in front of the fish? Or are you a guy that does as little as possible and throws them right out of the pack?
Cool. Those are a couple good questions there. You know, I do my tweaks a little bit. I'll get into paint jobs sometimes, you know, custom paints. And, you know, I have a couple tricks of the trade too, where, you know, I put up some fishing hacks video where I think I can make a lure better, whether it be a weedless chatterbait or different hooks on a bait, or a lot of little tweaks you can do. But for the most part, I'm kind of a guy, a lure out of the pack. You know, I'll customize just about everything, whether I trim it, maybe bend it, or do something else. But most of the lures nowadays are just awesome. You know, the lure companies out there are great, and they make lures that work and they catch fish. Now, as far as like what you asked first, my favorite techniques or favorite lures, one of the things, you know, I've kind of questioned myself in my career so far is that I really haven't established myself as a one-player game where, you know, like you have your flippers, or you have your shallow guys, or you have your topwater guys, where if that flipping bites on, you can't beat, you know, this guy, whether it be like a Hackney or Randall Tharp or whoever you want to bring up. Or if that shallow bites on, you're not going to beat a John Cox or, you know, JT. Everybody, you know, JT's a lot more versatile than people think, even though he's a Florida guy. I kind of look at myself as a little bit more versatile, where I freaking love drop shot in 40 foot of water for big smallmouth. And then I love pit punching a 3 ounce weight. You know, favorite wise, I guess power fishing, you know, whether it be just chucking a spinner bait and watching that, or flipping or pitching a jig, or some of my absolute favorites. But whatever way I'm catching them is my favorite.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. You bring up spinnerbait because Mr. Noak asked, "What's your favorite blade bait?" And also, blade deeper than 25 feet do you throw? Sorry, Ben, if I'm butchering this, retype that in there. But I think he's asking. I don't know what that is, Ben.
I'm not looking at the comments, but just getting some of the words you are and knowing where he lives, I'm gonna guess he's talking blade baits like silver buddies, like that style of blade baits. What I'm guessing, and we'll go with that. And if we're wrong, just correct us up there. But man, I honestly don't have a favorite brand of that style of blade bait or silver buddy or buddy fishing. You know, the silver buddy was the original, as far as I know. They make a great one. I'll change out the hooks on them sometimes, but there's a lot of guys, a lot of jobbers that are pouring them out of their garage or in their basement and selling them pretty cheap that make incredible blade baits. You know, it's no different than what you're getting in a package. You're just getting them in a bulk bag, and you lose enough of them where it helps to be able to get them a little bit cheaper. And you know what it kind of comes down to is the hook now, and as long as they fall, you know, with that erratic action and don't spin too much, then they're all excellent baits now.
Now, guys, there is, and Ben, you've seen me actually talk about it. There's a company that's close by to me. It's called Ledge Hog, not Ledge Head. Ledge Head's my swim bait head guy, but Ledge Hog, and he makes giant, basically the equivalent of a silver buddy. And I mean, these things, I think the smallest one he makes is a 3/4. The rest of them are like 2, 3, and 5 ounces. They are giant. And on Douglas,
how big is the body? How big is the body? Because this is something we're looking for.
I mean, listen, man. I'll tell you what I've got. I will get you some if you want one. I'll get you 1 or 2 and send them to you. You just get me your info after the fact, and I'll get you.
This is a buddy of mine found these at a yard sale. I just so happen to have them hanging there. Now these are absolute. Where are we? There's the camera. These are giant silver buddies, but the trouble is they're 5 ounces. They're saltwater jobbers, and I'm looking for something big that's more in like your 1 ounce range, something I can manage.
1 to 3 ounces are the ones that I have, and man, they catch giant. You can fish them like a rattle trap if you adjust it up to the right hole. You just throw it out there and grind it. Oh my God! In the spring, they just eat it alive. Anyway, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to, start plugging ledge hog there. But yeah, I'll get you some of those, Joe. I'll shoot you a link to their website too. Leader on braid or straight fluoro on your spinning reels?
Oh, sorry about that.
Joe, step away.
Leader, I heard leader on braid or straight fluoro. What was the?
Joe's hitting the
technique? Drop shotting?
So leader on braid or straight fluoro on your spinning reels?
Leader to braid. Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm kind of an old-fashioned type of guy. Always been that way, but I kind of fought it for a little while, but there's so many advantages to that braid to fluoro. I mean, just we can list a couple right now. You're not going to get those line twists. You're protected for so much more from abrasions, and the sensitivity is just absolutely amazing. If you want a lure to float or fall differently, you can kind of manage that with your braid too. And if you're in clear or dirty water, you just change the length of your leader, and you could basically change a spool of line by just changing your leader rather than the entire spool. So, ever since I switched, and a really important part of that is making sure you have a reel with a very good drag system. You can get away with it with lines that stretch, whether you're talking mono, if guys even know what that is anymore, or fluoro. But with the braid and these big smallmouth, I catch a lot of big smallmouth or even largemouth making these, big runs. It's important to have a reel that has an excellent drag system if you are going to run that braid to fluoro. You are going to get less stretch, which is kind of what you're looking for that, just to get the that sensitivity. But on the same token, you have to be able to fight that low stretch with a good soft rod and a good drag system. So definitely 100% braid to leader, to floral leader.
All right. Oh, I feel like I'm missing one. And just to North Florida Fishing 42 won my big 3,500 giveaway, and he actually got the smallest version of that. And he said he caught he loves it. He caught a 2.5 on it the other day. Mr. Noak asked, "What is your favorite connection knots?"
Oh man, listen. I'm not super super, I guess, technical with that stuff. As far as a connection knot, I tie the uni, the W, the uni to uni.
That's what
that thing is the easiest and strongest knot that I tie. I know the FG knot's stronger. I know the what was it called? The Crazy Alberto. Cody Myers taught me that, and Jason Johnson. There's a lot of knots that are even more intricate. They're harder to tie and they're stronger, but I don't break knots. So I don't really need a stronger knot, and they get through the guides pretty well. So that uni to uni is like freaking steak and potatoes to me, man. It freaking works.
So I've got one question about that. At what point, how long of a leader do you generally use? And at what point, because I was noticing I was breaking, I was probably down to about, I had 5 feet of leader, and I was setting the hook on some smallmouth on the bed, and I was snapping my knot. That's probably too much on that knot, with that short leader. But so what are you comfortable on each end of the spectrum? How much do you start with, and once it gets down to X amount of feet, when do you cut it off and tie on a new leader?
Yeah, I usually don't go much less than like 3 or 4 foot, just because the fluoros today are really incredible lines too. I'll run as much as a 12, 15 foot, maybe even 20 foot leader, which is, you think, well, that's your whole cast. Well, sometimes I'm fishing like 45 to 50 foot of water for these big smallies in water where you can see 20 foot. I can see 25 foot down. So I'm throwing a yellow braid or a lot of times I throw that yellow braid from Power Pro. I love it. And, I'll throw a longer leader, but with the shorter leader, I'll go down as much as 3 or 4 foot like that. And, my hook sets with the spinning stuff, or most of the stuff I use aren't snaps or hard jerks. They're like steady pulls, and I'm using a lot sharper, smaller hooks on a lot of stuff, whether it be drop shotting or wacky rigging or shaky head fishing. Your hooks for that stuff are lighter style hooks that are even sharper. So,
yeah. So what is, let's see, who asked this one? Jimmy Thatcher. What is, in your opinion, the most underrated older, or classic bait?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I never heard a question quite like that. Jimmy, great question. It was Jimmy, right?
Yep, Jimmy Thatcher.
Man, I think it's back now. Now, you want to talk exact baits? I'll show you one if you want to see one. Right now, yeah. I'll show you the most underrated bait. Now,
whip it out.
A couple years ago, the guys in Maine would freaking hang me for showing you this. But cat's out of the bag, man. Everybody, it's almost run its course up here. But I'm gonna show you this if you guys like crankbait fishing. Where is it? I just so happen to have a couple right there. Now there's also, I'll show you the two of my absolute favorites. I just so happen to have them here at the desk. 2 of my favorite baits, that one is kind of known, there's a big cult following, but the other one's pretty well not known, and that's the one in Maine. First, I'll show you the one with the cult following that's known. And that right there, folks, is your pre-Rapala wiggle wart. Now, Missouri, Ozarks, everybody knows this bait, but you get out of that region, and guys really don't know how awesome this bait is and how much of a fish catcher it is. It's pretty ridiculous. And they stopped making them, I don't know how many years ago when Rapala bought Storm and changed the mold. But it's an absolute killer there. So that's like, other than the people who know, which is a small amount of people, that's one of the most underrated crankbaits in the history of crankbaits.
Hey, listen, I agree with that completely. I'm going to tell you a funny story about pre-Rapala wiggle warts. Me and my buddy Tim, about 2 years ago, we go down to Dale Holland. We got this guy with us. He's kind of showing us around and, you know, telling us some stuff. Well, the water down there, most of the time, it's pretty clear. Well, on this day, it come some real bad rains. It's really muddy. So we start fishing points with wiggle warts, and we start catching some good smallmouth. And he whips out this crazy looking clown. I mean, it not traditional clown, just this, I mean, blue and chrome and chartreuse color. And he looks at me and goes, I have this special painted, and I'm fishing off the back of the boat. And I've never fished on a boat with power poles, and I am beating the paint off them power poles all day. And I tell him, I almost beg him not to give me that bait. I'm like, please don't give me that bait. I'm like, I don't want that bait. I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm going to break that bait. 2 casts into it after he goes, I don't care, I've got 50 of them. Bill right off of it. I'm like, man, I told you not to give me that bait.
Did he cry?
No, he swore up and down he had like 30 more, but you know, it didn't make me feel any better whatsoever.
Yeah. I did that at Hartwell 2 years ago. First time there, I had one that was blue, and they were eating it pretty good. And I roll up the spot second day of the tournament, you know, and first cast all jacked up. I reach back and hit the side of the boat, and off it splits in half. So that was the first bait. The one I didn't get to is the one in Maine that a lot of people never even heard of. And we're going to bring it to you live right now on BassGeek Fishing Channel.
BassGeek and Joe Holland exclusive tonight.
I'm going to let you guys comment first. Heck, let them comment, and you guys tell us what that is, if you can. First one to get it, I'll send you one of these. Not this one. But I'll send you one. You DM or PM him your address, and whoever can name that bait right there first in his comments gets it.
All right, guys, impromptu average Joe giveaway. So look at that bait. So show them again. I'll be quiet for a minute.
I'll show you a different one. I'll show you a different one right here. This one's never even been fished, and it really hasn't been made for about 45 years probably. That's how old this thing is. This one, they kind of smell like that weird plastic they used to use back then, and it's metal too. So this is like the original.
Smelling it.
Oh yeah, don't smell. But you know, you open the case and it's like, you know, it smells like rotten plastic. But they freaking catch fish. So if you're a crankbait fisherman, look at that bill. That's your original square bill. Look how big that bill is and how square it is. You know, how wide. And then it goes into a crankbait that dives deep. So you want to talk about erratic hunting crankbait like nothing else on the market today. You got to look back 40 years. And, you know, me and 4 or 5 other guys that in Maine for quite a few years kept it under our hats really well, actually. And then it got out of the bag, and everybody's throwing it now to the point where, you know, everybody's throwing it now, and the fish have seen it. But has anybody got it yet?
So Rich Shackelford says, I don't know if he means mud bug, mud bug, maybe.
He got it. It's the Arbogast mud bug from the same company that brought out the jitterbug 100 years ago.
Wow.
This was their deep crankbait. And man, they make it all different sizes, and it is a fish catcher. If you like throwing a crankbait, tie yourself one of these on. Others, you know, the only downfall to it is a little light. So casting it, you really got to load it behind you first. You can't just whip it, or it'll kind of helicopter and not go far, and you might get a back flash. So what you do is you load it up on your tip and just send it forward. And then when it lands, you got to count to 1 because it always lands either upside down. Then you got a buzz bug is what we call it when it stays on the top instead of a mud bug. But boy, this thing goes like this. It lands flat, and then it just turns because of this. Look how that eyelet is. So that hopefully that answers Jimmy's question about a secret bait or a bait that's totally forgotten or a technique, and that answers that. And to the gentleman who won the contest and called this the mud bug, which is what it is, the RBS mud bug, get either DM or private message me or Hank your address, BassGeek your address, and I'm gonna get you one of these in the mail. Sucker.
I'm kind of jealous.
Well, you could have wrote it in. I didn't exclude anybody.
That's true. We didn't put stipulations. I'd have felt like I was stealing from them.
Hey, get me your address and I'll get you one too. But you gotta post a picture up to either my Instagram or my Facebook. Tag me in one with the first fish you catch on it.
All right.
Now this particular one here is the brown parrot. The color's not showing up great, but that's like the gem of the gems right there. And you get them when it run right. I got one that's the next size up. My tournament partner and I were pre-fishing. He knew how in tune that lure was. He dove down into the rocks and pulled it out for me, so it didn't break off. But they're on eBay. You can pick them up sometimes cheap, sometimes expensive. But yeah, I'll get you one out in the mail, both of you guys.
All right, Rick, make sure that you I just put my email out there, so make sure you send me your information. I'll pass it along to Joe, and he can get that out to you. All right, let me look through here, guys. If I've missed a question, I don't get it, please make sure. Now, it's getting late. We're at 8:57. I'm not going to keep Joe. He's, whatever
you want to do, man.
He's got a lot of stuff going on, I'm sure. Let's see. Rich, he stated on there, by the way, that's telling how old he is.
You don't have to be old, but it does help.
So I've got a question again from Mr. Noak. Depth, square bill style. So.
Oh, on these baits?
All right. I don't know if he's talking about those baits or if he's asking maybe what your favorite square bill basically is. And then he did ask, where do you throw that particular bait the most?
Oh, great question. So listen, we fish these. These will get down to like 22 foot. Some of the bigger ones, like the 1 ounce one or the bigger lipped ones. Now they'll make a skinnier lip too on them, but we'll throw them down in the 20-foot range. I'm mostly fishing humps and rock piles and boulders and edges in like anywhere from 15 to 10 foot is the absolute key with these. Like if you're out there looking at 18 to 8 in that range and you want to crank, it's really hard to beat these if there's crawfish in your lake. And man, there aren't many lakes in the country that don't have crawfish in them, or crayfish, or crawdads, or crawdaddies.
Yeah.
If you will.
So, yeah, wherever you're from, it depends.
Exactly. Same thing, different name.
So wait. What do you call them? Crappie or crappie?
Man, we just started getting those in Maine. I call them crappie. Okay,
all right.
Is that right?
If you're north, they're crappie. If you're south, they're crappie. And I live literally on the border. It just depends on who you're talking to. So
do people get upset over it?
No, at least they haven't with me. So I mean, I'd be like, well, just eat them. They're good sandwiches.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I love that when guys get all upset over colloquialisms or different sayings here and there. I love that when people get upset over it, fight over it. It's funny.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So there's a particular mountain range, the Bible Belt that I live in. Starts with an A. Pronounce that for me.
Boy, you just put me on the spot.
No.
There's a couple that start with A's, but we're gonna go with the
down south, Smoky Mountains. That is the
Appalachian.
Oh no, gong! I tell everybody all the time. I'm like, look, we live here. It's the Appalachian Mountains.
Come on,
Appalachians are everybody. Everybody that's not from around here calls it the Appalachians.
Come on,
but
really?
If you look at it, it is spelled Appalachia.
So say it one more time, so it might sink in here.
Appalachia.
Appalachians.
Yeah, Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah, there's an Apalachicola down in where's that? Florida? Florida. So I'm gonna try to remember that, the Appalachian. Yeah. Now people are gonna look at me funny when I say that.
You tell them a guy that lives right in the daggone middle of it said, if you say it Appalachians, you're wrong.
Man, I've never in my life heard that.
I even live one of the towns that it's like right next door to me is called Appalachia.
No way. It's
yeah.
funny, man, when I travel, especially Alabama, I noticed that the towns are not pronounced how they're spelled. Now, I'm trying to think of a couple of them, but I do distinctively remember there were several towns, and I thought that the good old Southern boys were pulling my leg, this Yankee here, were pulling my leg when they kept saying the name of these towns, and I was pronouncing them how they were spelled, and they were saying, no, it's this. Oh, I'll remember some of them eventually, but I do remember a bunch of them.
Now there was somebody, and I missed it. I don't know, guys, if I totally screw this up. And guys, last few questions. We're at 9 after. We'll go to 10 after 9, and then I'm gonna let Joe go. He's been a great sport. Like I said, I'm a super fan of his, a total fanboy. But there was somebody asked. Sorry,
I just saw one asking where I live in Maine, and man, I live in a small town called Jefferson, Maine. It's my absolute favorite place on this planet. 80 square miles, 2,000 people. Most everybody knows each other's names, and it's a great small community. It's kind of mid-coast, down east area, and they call it like Central Maine. But if you looked on a map, I'm still in the bottom third. There's a lot of land up north of us.
So somebody asked, with a jig, straight braid to it or braid to leader?
Braid to leader for sure. Is that what the question was?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I love braid to leader. A lot of times, if I'm throwing a jig, I'll just throw straight floral and stuff. All my spinning stuff has braid backing to leader, and sometimes on a top water, I'll throw a leader on there if I think it matters, and sometimes I'll just leave straight braid on a top water.
Now, does that change? Like if you're in grass, I mean, do you just go straight braid? Because now for me, I don't like to fish. I back everything with braid, but I will use fluoro around wood because I just don't. Some of the braid don't now, but it'll either saw into a piece of bark or it makes that sort of zip line coming across. If it's making it going through your guides as smooth as they are. And I fish a lot of clear water. Now, if it's dirtier water, I don't know that I'd mind as much. I fish straight braid in heavy grass, but I fish fluoro and everything else.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's a really good teaching point too for a lot of guys. If you're fishing a lot of wood, braid will absolutely saw its way and cut into that wood to the point where you're going to lose fish or they're going to get pegged to that tree. Whereas floral rides along the top of it. Now, the braid might not break off as much, but you got to kind of weigh out your options there. If you're fishing in grass and thick grass, almost all the time throw braid if you can get away with it. Most of the time you can because it looks like the grass. And the cool thing about that is, like it cuts itself into wood, it'll actually cut that grass.
Yeah.
And not give you that big bow around. It'll just saw its way right through it. So those are a couple advantages to braid and floral.
All right. So, and this is actually a question. I'm glad, Ben, that you brought this up again, Mr. Noak. And Ben, forgive me if I'm butchering your name, but he actually brings up he's seen you cleaning up the damage from the hurricane up there, and I seen a picture that you posted with a tree on a house. First off, is that your house? And
no, that was in town here. Yeah, we last Monday, not this Monday, the one prior, we got smoked up here in Maine. For some reason, it's not national news. We could care less. We're kind of loners up here anyway. But we got smoked up here in Maine with the worst storm in my lifetime as far as power outages. We had over 500,000 power outages. And you're looking at 1.2 million people in the state. So nearly half the state was without power. One of my best friends just got it back 7 days. So 6 days after the storm, he just got it back. And hopefully power's been restored. I don't know that it's been restored everywhere, but in my area, we do have it back. And, it really gave me a great opportunity to get out there and help as many people as I can because I love doing that. You know, there's nothing better. You know, I'm young, I'm healthy enough to get out there and you know, move trees around and cut trees. I got to run a chainsaw all week, which I probably shouldn't be running because I get a little too aggressive with a chainsaw. But since the governor declared us in a state of emergency, that's one of the bans that gets lifted. Trapper Joe, as they call me up north, is allowed to run a chainsaw for that week. So, you know, I had friends reaching out to me from Florida and other parts of the state saying, hey, man, we got power. Come stay with us, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And honestly, like, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm in my absolute glory if I'm able to get out there and you know, be able to help other people and put myself to some service for my community, especially. So.
No, that, like I said, that's one of the things, and it comes across in your videos. I mean, you can tell you're a shirt off your back guy to whoever needs it, and you know,
thank you. I appreciate
that's
that.
good. That's you know, that's something that, you know, you said it earlier, and I think that it's something that, you know, most anglers, you know, you're always going to get in a little tiff, you know, here and there on the water, on, you know, position or spots, but you know, even those guys you want to kick in the teeth out on the water some days, they're generally some of the best people you'll meet. You know, fishing, in the sport of bass fishing, it just seems like there's just so many guys that want to help and want to talk about fishing, and just like you said, the community, and that's at all levels, it seems like.
Yeah, guys, I mean, if you're watching this, you know, everybody's so quick to hate or point out somebody's faults or you know, feel like that they've been wrong. But you know, one thing I've learned is that if you don't look for that type of stuff and you look for the good in everybody, most of the people they're not gonna surprise you. Almost all the people you'll meet are good people, you know, and I'd rather be wrong, you know, that way than the other way. You know, I'd rather be wrong thinking somebody's a good person and find out the hard way, maybe get burned, than thinking everybody's wrong or looking for everybody else's faults, or you know, you see it on the internet all the time in the comment sections and stuff like that, people cutting each other down. But man, it's so much easier just to get out there and be good to your fellow man, and you gain from it, you prosper from it as much as they do. So,
and that is a perfect note to end us on tonight. That is, I couldn't agree more. Guys, just be good to each other, help each other out when you're out on the water. I know most of you do anyway. You know, take a lead from Joe. You know, like I said, it's why I'm such a big fan of his. You can tell he's just such a genuine good guy, and you know, that speaks tons. Just what he said right there. So, Joe, brother, I can't say how much I appreciate you and how awesome it's been. I'll get Rich's information to you ASAP. Rich, make sure you get me your information, you know, as soon as you can. Thank you for the impromptu giveaway. I can't even believe you're giving those away. They don't even make it. This man is crazy. But he's crazy. He's crazy awesome. Crazy Joe.
He's crazy. Hank, I can't thank you enough for having me on the show, man. Your videos are awesome, guys. If you're on here because you follow my stuff, please check out his stuff. BassGeek, BassGeek Fishing, Instagram, YouTube. Check it out. It's so easy to click that subscribe button. Actually, I'm going to give that away too. Free subscription to his channel and his Instagram for the rest of this month. So you got like 21 days, 30 days to subscribe free to his channel. It's on me.
Crazy Joe bait giveaway. Everything must go.
Yes.
All right, guys. Listen, y'all have a good night, Joe. You gonna be doing any fishing this weekend?
I'm actually gonna try to perch fish a little bit. We're deer hunting up here in Maine. I'm gonna try to get us some deer, so we get something to eat on the road, some Maine deer. And but I'm gonna do some white perch fishing. It's the best fishing. It's the best eating fish there is up in Maine. And I'm gonna get some for my friends and some people around town. It's gonna be good.
All right, guys, I want to say thanks. Thanks for everybody stopping in. Joe, hang around here. Don't jump off yet. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. As always, guys, any questions and comments in the comment section, or if there was any questions that we didn't get to, after we close this out, it'll be posted on my YouTube channel. Make sure you go subscribe to Joe. If you haven't subscribed to me, make sure you subscribe to me. And, you know, you guys rock. I'll see you. All right, let me push the secret button here.